Imagine the biggest blowout you've ever witnessed in an organized football game. What was the final score? 62-7, 59-0, 58-0, 73-0? What if I told you that a game ended in a final score of 222-0? I think it's safe to say that a vast majority of people hate blowouts. That is, unless of course it's your team blowing someone out. But even then, I think a lot of people would probably say they prefer to watch a competitive game. In any case, blowouts nearly make football unwatchable to the masses. They just kill the interest of the casual fan. It damages the product when the outcome of a game is decided well before the final quarter even starts. But what happens when the outcome of a game is decided before the game itself even starts? I know what you may be thinking. This happens all the time. Off the top of my head, I'd point to a game like the 2015 AFC Championship between the Patriots and the Colts. No one really took the Colts seriously. The game ended the way everyone thought it would, a 45-7 Patriots victory. But the difference between a game like that and the biggest blowout in the history of football is literally just that. The 2015 AFC Championship was actually a game. The 1916 matchup between Georgia Tech and Cumberland was a massacre. So the story behind this game is absolutely crazy. We can trace the brutalities of this bloodbath to a 1915 college baseball game between Georgia Tech and Cumberland University. Cumberland is struggling financially, so in an effort to generate revenue, the athletic department counts on selling a lot of baseball tickets. Well, how exactly do you sell a lot of baseball tickets? Back then, all you had to do was be really good. So Cumberland ended up doing just that, and they beat the Georgia Tech baseball team by a score of 22-0. A score that downright pissed off Georgia Tech's baseball coach, John Heisman. Yeah, that John Heisman. But more on him later. Anyway, there's a lot of speculation that the reason Cumberland was able to pull off such a big blowout is because they were disguising semi-pro and pro baseball players as college kids and sending them out there to play. You'll be hard-pressed to find evidence on the internet that provides irrefutable concrete evidence of this one way or the other, but what matters here is that John Heisman 100% believed this to be the case. He may have even been the first person to accuse Cumberland of it. According to a book written about the game, there are also reports that a guy named George E. Allen, who is going to be extremely important to the story later on, was the one who arranged for the pro baseball players to disguise themselves as college kids. But I couldn't find a source on the internet that provided concrete proof of this either. Fast forward to the eve of the 1916 football season. The once solid Cumberland football team has been discontinued due to the school's financial struggles, as well as a lack of recent success. All while the Georgia Tech football team is on an absolute tear, led by head coach John Heisman. The same John Heisman that coached the baseball team, who also happens to be the same John Heisman that invented the forward pass, as well as the snap and the onside kick, and is literally the guy who college football's MVP trophy is named after. The same guy who was embarrassed by Cumberland's baseball team just a year prior. The 1915 Georgia Tech football team went 7-0-1 under Heisman and outscored their opponents 233-24. This was literally the most dominant season in the history of college football up to this point. Tech also went on to start the 1916 season off with a bang, defeating Mercer University by a score of 61-0. The problem was Georgia Tech's second opponent after Mercer was scheduled to be Cumberland. And as I told you earlier, Cumberland's football team had been discontinued. Heisman was not having this. He wanted to get back at Cumberland for what they did to the baseball team. So Heisman wrote a letter to Cumberland's athletic department insisting that the scheduled game still be played. He even offered to pay Cumberland $500, which is equivalent to $11,700 in 2019, and to cover Cumberland's trip expenses if they showed up for the game. However, if Cumberland refused, Heisman demanded that Cumberland reimburse Georgia Tech $3,000 to cover the lack of revenue from the game, which is equivalent to about $70,000 in 2020. Or, 3 years of tuition from one person nowadays. Nah, in all fairness, tuition was actually way cheaper back then. Even when taking inflation into account, average tuition in 1915 was only about $150 a year, which translates to about $3,714 today. So $70K was actually a shit ton of money back then. So seeing as they had no choice, Cumberland agreed to honor the scheduled meeting between the two schools. So how did Cumberland get over the issue of, not having a football team? Well, they recruited the efforts of a young stud, Georgie Allen, who had previously served as both the baseball and football team student manager. They wanted young Allen to recruit a team of guys to play football, and Cumberland wanted Allen to be the coach of said team. Allen was the dude we talked about earlier, the guy who potentially got all those baseball players to suit up for Cumberland so that they could blow Georgia Tech out. On a side note, Georgie Allen went on to have like a crazy, remarkable life after all this. He was an advisor and a friend to multiple presidents, including Roosevelt, Truman, and Eisenhower. Anyway, Allen put a team together of about 12 to 16 players, depending on who you ask, the majority of which were his fraternity brothers. So the stage is set. We have a team of non-football playing frat boys versus the greatest football team on the planet up to this point. What happens next is extremely sad and extremely depressing. So Cumberland got the ball first to start the game. They then punted on third down. Georgia Tech scored on the very next play. Cumberland got the ball back and then literally fumbles it one play later. 2 plays later, Georgia Tech is already sitting at touchdown number 3. This would turn out to be a recurring theme the entire night. Georgia Tech scored on every single set of downs it had the entire game, meaning that they never even had to get a first down. They had a touchdown by the time fourth down rolled around every time anyway. By the time the first quarter was over, the score was sitting at 63-0. 2 points more than Georgia Tech scored in their 61-0 blowout of Mercer just the game before. By the time halftime rolled around, the score was sitting at 126-0. At halftime, Heisman reportedly got his guys together for a little team meeting. Heisman allegedly told his dudes, "All right, team, we're ahead, but you just can't tell what those Cumberland players have up their sleeves. They may spring a surprise. Be alert, men. Hit 'em hard, but hit 'em clean." Before halftime ended, Coach Allen had no choice but to try to reason with Heisman. The two talked, and Heisman agreed to shorten the game by 6 minutes. Tech added 54 more points in the third quarter and 42 in the fourth, bringing our grand total to 222 points, the most scored ever in either a college or pro football game. Georgia Tech would also go on to total 32 touchdowns, rush for 922 yards, and pick 6 passes off, all while never actually throwing a single pass themselves. They simply didn't need to. Georgia Tech's halfback, Everett Strupper, scored 8 touchdowns and an extra point all by himself. Meanwhile, Cumberland either turned the ball over or punted on every single possession they had the entire game. In addition to their 6 picks, Cumberland would also fumble the ball 9 times and lose every single one of them. Also, several of the frat boys were brutally injured during this game. Cumberland's quarterback, Charles Edwards, was carted off 3 freaking times with concussions. This dude's brains were probably literally scrambled eggs by the end of this. Then we arrive at the tragedy of Vishy Woods, who blocked a kick with his face, which was actually the only effective play Cumberland had the entire game on defense. Back then it was common for dudes to get on each other's shoulders to block PATs, so Cumberland threw poor Vishy up there and destroyed his face in the process. Offensively, Cumberland's highlights included a 10-yard pass and a 5-yard rush, 2 of the 6 Cumberland plays that actually resulted in positive yardage. By the end of the game, Cumberland players were literally hiding under blankets, begging for the game to end. When the game finally did come to an end, Heisman walked up to Coach Allen and gave him the check for $500. He allegedly said maybe we can get together next baseball season. Jeez, dude. Heisman is the freaking Grim Reaper. He came to collect the souls of those poor boys that night. I know I skipped a lot of the really ridiculous stories, like the dog chasing the Cumberland player around the field, and the Cumberland guy who threw the ball in the air as soon as he got the snap and ran away, but that's because I honestly don't think I believe them. The story of this game has become so sensationalized that I think a lot of the rumors to come out of it have been greatly exaggerated. Believable facts in this game are extremely hard to come by on the internet as a result, so I kept to things that I think are mostly true. So as you can see, this was no game. This was indeed a massacre. Never before nor since has a blowout gone to these extremes. Although there actually was a case of a high school football game in 1927 that had a final score of 256-0. But information on this game is next to impossible to find. Like seriously, try to find some information on it. I did, and I found nothing. So I chose to limit the criteria to college and pros for this when I say biggest blowout ever. A funny thing I found while researching this video is that in 2013, a Texas high school football game between Aledo High School and Western Hills High School ended in a final score of 91-0. After the game, a parent from the losing team actually filed an anti-bullying lawsuit on the winning team. Dude, imagine if John Heisman put Cumberland through the same crap he put them through back then, only in today's context. That dude would probably be in jail for attempted murder on these kids. But anyway, that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.